Retired Assistant Chief John Grussing of the Normal Fire Department.
Good morning.
Morning. Morning.
Well, you guys hit the hospitality room early. Good morning.
Good morning.
Again, welcome to Bloomington Normal, the 40th convention of the AIFF. I'm privileged to be up here. I'd like to thank President Devaney, his executive board, the co-chairman of the convention, Ed Hill, Local 49 President John Meckley, 2442 President David Pollitt, their executive boards and their members for not only allowing me to speak, but putting together what I know is going to be a great convention for you guys. As I said, my name is John Grussing. I retired May 2nd after almost 27 years with the Normal Fire Department. I retired as an assistant chief, so thanks for not throwing anything. I spent 5 years as an assistant chief where I served as on the Illinois Chiefs EMS committee. I served as president of the Central Illinois Fire Chiefs. But for the 22 years before that, I was a very proud member of Local 2442. I served as pension secretary. I served on several negotiating teams. I served as vice president. And it was a privilege to be a part of the organization. I tell you all this just for the purpose of letting you realize I've sat on both sides of the table. I've traveled the state. I've seen a lot of issues from both perspectives. And the one thing in common, the common thought that always occurred to me, the last several years have been tough. Declining budgets, brownouts, layoffs, flat raises, no raises, decreases in pay. It's been a rough few years. We still have battles going forward. The effect of the Affordable Care Act on EMS delivery, mobile integrated health care, declining sales revenues, continue to tax on staff and continue to tax on our pension, our benefits, our salaries. So what allowed us to be successful over the last few years? What's going to allow us to take this organization into the next decade? And the one word that kept coming to mind was commitment. Now that word gets thrown around a lot, and I think a lot of times it gets confused with involvement. A lot of people are involved. Very few people are committed. So how do we define commitment? So I spent some time looking for some really eloquent quotes about commitment. Some examples from our great military leaders over the years about commitment. But it occurred to me that a shining example of commitment was right under our nose, and it's one that I think all of you can relate to. Some of you may not know, but you're sitting at ground zero for public sector collective bargaining in the state of Illinois. So I'm going to try and give you several months of history in about 3 minutes here, so bear with me. 1978, newly formed Normal Firefighters Local 2442 requested a bargain contract with the city. After several weeks of fruitless negotiations, scare tactics, threats of demotion, threats of termination, actual termination, they decided to go on strike. What would turn out to be the longest firefighter strike in United States history, right here. They were posturing on both sides. There were several weeks of negotiations. But the city, seeking a legal remedy in the form of an injunction, requesting a local judge to order the firefighters to return to work. They got their injunction. Firefighters being firefighters, they politely declined to abide by that injunction. And in the move that I think spun both sides, that local judge sentenced the 24 members of Local 2442 to 42 days in jail. 42 days in jail for seeking their rights through collective bargaining. Now, most of the firefighters did 24 hours in the county lockup, alternating 24-hour shifts in the firehouse under armed guard. The members of the negotiating team spent 42 days, the entire 42 days in jail. And some of the stories that came out of that time, I think, really define commitment. You know, commitment is then President Ron Lawson being able to hold his local together through 42 days of imprisonment, spending his time in incarceration, not hanging his head, not regretting his decision, but studying labor law, studying negotiation tactics, being ready to fight when he got out. Commitment was 2442 member John McAtee, who by virtue of the fact he was on vacation, wasn't covered by the injunction order. He didn't have to go to jail, but he stood up in court and demanded to be jailed with his brothers. Commitment was a best friend of mine who's, you think your probation was tough, his probationary year consisted of being fired and rehired 3 times and then put in jail. and he told me, and they wonder why I have an attitude problem. But he served 20 years with the Normal Fire Department and he served it well. So commitment, and at the end of that, at the end of the imprisonment, at the end of negotiations, the 24 members of Local 2442 won their contract and redefined public sector collective bargaining for the state of Illinois. So commitment was 24 guys willing to give up 42 days of their life. Commitment was Ron Lawson spending those hours studying. Commitment is a man who didn't have to go to jail that demanded to be with his brothers. Now, am I advocating everybody go back to the locals and try to get imprisoned? No. But the simple definition of commitment, guys, is recognizing the fact that there are times when the needs of the organization outweigh the needs of the individuals. There are times when what you need to do outweighs what you want to do. And as I travel around the state, I sense sometimes that we lose some of that because we have what I like to call the factionization of the fire service. Factions here, groups here. I'm EMS, he's suppression. I'm from Chicago, he's from Clinton. I'm from Northern Illinois, he's from Southern Illinois. I mean, it goes on and on and on. We need to recommit ourselves. The message I'd like you to take back from this convention, to take back to your locals, is to recommit yourself to being one organization. Because that's how firefighters have always been successful. Be it on the fire ground, be it at the negotiating table, we've always been a team. We've always been a family. We've always stood with each other. And that's what I'd like to for you to take back today. You know, we've got a lot of battles coming, but I've had the experience now of being a bit removed for a few weeks and looking at the fire service from the outside. So here's the good news. You still have the greatest job on the face of the planet. And from the outside looking in, I mean, I always knew that what we did was kind of cool, but what you guys do every day is amazing. You make a real difference in people's lives. On their worst day, when their world is falling apart, people call you. It is a wonderful privilege to be part of the fire service. It is a huge responsibility to be part of the fire service. Don't ever stop making yourselves better. The poet Walt Whitman, when talking about life, wrote, "The great play goes on, and you may contribute a verse." My question to you, as you go through the convention, as you go back to your locals, what will your verse be? What will you do to make yourself better? What will you do to make your department better? What will you do to make your local better? What will you do to make this organization better? What will you do to make the fire service better? And that's where the commitment comes in, guys, because there's times it's not easy. This job asks an awful lot. But having spent a career doing something I loved, being able to step back and look at it, we've got a very special thing. Recommit to keeping it that way. It was the great honor of my life to be a part of you guys for 27 years. Enjoy your career, enjoy your convention, because I know it's going to be a good one. Thanks for letting me talk to you for a few minutes. Be safe. Thank you.